Today, you're going to hear about why China Evergrande's collapse is not the same as the Lehman Brothers collapse in 2008. Quick disclaimer, I'll be sharing with you some of my opinion, which may or may not be correct. And with that, let's go. What caused the 2008 financial crisis is a housing bubble in US which encouraged millions to borrow beyond their means. That is similar to what has happened in China for many years. We'll be referring to this article, The Collapse of Lehman Brothers, a Case Study. And within that article, you'd see that Lehman Brothers was the fourth largest investment bank in US, employing 25,000 people worldwide. In comparison, China Evergrande has more than 200,000 employees in China. Lehman Brothers had 639 billion of assets and 613 billion in liabilities. In comparison, China Evergrande's liabilities in US dollars are about $310 billion. So that's about half the size of Lehman Brothers. In 2007, Lehman Brothers underwrote more mortgage-backed securities than any other firm, accumulating more than 85 billion in their portfolio. In comparison, China Evergrande is the second biggest developer in China and carries the most debt of all property developers in the world. Lehman Brothers' stock fell sharply in August 2007 with the failure of two Bear Stearns hedge funds. Many question the decision to allow Lehman Brothers to fail when compared to government's tacit support for Bear Stearns, which was eventually acquired by JP Morgan Chase. Recently in China, Huarong Asset Management actually went under and received a rescue from government-led state-owned companies. That default was about $16 billion. Bank of America had held talks to buy Lehman Brothers but backed away after the government refused to help with Lehman Brothers' most troubled assets. Instead, Bank of America announced that you buy Merrill Lynch on the same day that Lehman filed for bankruptcy. Right now happening in China, China Evergrande's competitors and biggest rivals such as Vanke and Country Garden are all interested in acquiring some of its assets. The question is, will the Chinese government allow China Evergrande to default? China Evergrande does indeed have a sizable impact on the economy. It has 1,300 projects in 280 cities and employs more than 200,000 people. It has yet to complete 1.6 million worth of inventory of homes, and it has also borrowed money from its own staff. And in this article, you'll see that property sales account for close to 10% of China GDP. And property constitutes the vast bulk of Chinese household wealth. If we factor in construction or the related industries to property construction, you realize that the GDP impact is about 30%. Which means that if China Evergrande goes into default, there is a strong likelihood that it could cause a recession in China. This is the GDP performance in China. If China does indeed go into recession because of this situation, you realize that this is unprecedented. Will President Xi and his government dare to pull that trigger and allow China Evergrande to fail? Let's firstly think back on COVID-19. What happened in Wuhan? That situation to me was a clear indication that they had the courage to do unprecedented measures. President Xi's new priority is to curb on the escalating property prices, and gains on home have been made for more than a decade. So this cycle of gains is very stubborn. President Xi has also famously stated that house is for living and not for speculation. And rising property prices has become a source of income and wealth inequality. This has created discontent the government is hell-bent on controlling so that it does not cause social unrest. That is why I'll be working with the assumption that China Evergrande will be allowed to go into default because it's in the direction of reducing property prices. It is in line with helping families and a point that could increase birth rates. With that assumption in place, what could happen in the Chinese economy? The first is naturally banks that have lent money to China Evergrande. China Minsheng Bank Corp, Agricultural Bank of China, and ICBC are among China Evergrande's principal banks as of last year. And if we see the price chart for China Minsheng Bank, you realize that it came down significantly, which reflects strong possibility of bad debts. And as we know, China Evergrande has borrowed from more than 100 banks, big and small, which means bad debts could be seen across the entire banking sector, and some of the smaller Chinese banks would naturally fail. In addition, investors will become increasingly jittery that a collapse could spread to other developers. And consumers that buy properties, like Chinese nationals, they would hesitate, which means our developer sales could be impacted. And as we learned, Chinese developers rely a lot on pre-sales to collect the cash they need to start their projects moving. And without sales going, they'll realize that their cash will also start to run out. And when property developers suffer, the question is who else in the value chain would also suffer? I think it's quite natural to assume that subcontractors to a project would all naturally be impacted. For a big property developer, they typically use their bargaining power for favorable terms for trade payables as well as the margin. So many small contractors, which includes those that provide steel, those that provide glass, everybody in terms of construction sector would see massive losses. But we do know that Chinese economy is a closed loop. But that also does not mean that other countries would stay unscathed. Chinese investors who own Australian properties could liquidate their assets to cover their losses. Chinese investors are known to not only buy Australian properties, they also buy properties in Vancouver, Malaysia, Hong Kong, and Singapore. What about commodities related to Chinese property boom? China Evergrande is the world's largest importer of iron ore, and this chart confirms that iron ore prices have collapsed. They have lost about 50% in just a few months. But is that how far the impact can reach? Let's compare back to Lehman Brothers. In the period of global financial crisis, financial firms like Lehman Brothers actually packaged up mortgage-backed securities to sell them all over the world. It was also available for purchase back then in Singapore. In comparison, Chinese developers are exposed to more than 100 billion of bond repayments, and only 10% of outstanding bank loans are to non-financial clients globally. For Lehman Brothers' situation, the impact started in August 2007, and financial markets were seeing problems beyond the US borders. Northern Rock, a European bank, actually required emergency funding. UBS became the first major bank to announce losses due to subprime-related investments. But right now, there's no indication that any financial institution globally is impacted by China Evergrande's collapse. Their properties and investment products are not sold globally. And that's why I believe China Evergrande's collapse is not identical to the Lehman Brothers crisis. Smash on like and press on the subscribe because I have a third episode relating the investment opportunities that could present itself because of this collapse. So stay tuned for it.